Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be joining us from. This is Deven at Driveline. It's the Academy podcast. Joined as always by Driveline Academy coordinator Jeremy Tectile. I know it's October because my good friends at the Washington State Department of Transportation have rolled out their annual "Let's Screw Up Everyone's Commute" once we start team training. Yep. The good news is that I think since we recorded the last one, we're like fully underway with Academy team training. And like the first couple weeks have been gas. Gas is a driveline euphemism for something that goes well, not like anything flatulence related.
Whoever's editing this should put like the quote at the bottom, like gas. And
Yeah.
The definition of it.
Chloe.
Like overlay it.
Chloe. I know that it's October because every October for the last 3 years that we've had teams, there's some transportation project that starts that takes what could be when I'm coming back from work, like literally like a 25-minute commute and turns it into like 45 to an hour. You got to experience the same joy as per usual last night. Which is great. And like, these are very much first world problems, you know, like, and to be very, very specific, I have the privilege of being able to be in my car, navigating these problems where they're like men and women that are actually like on the street working. And I get that. But like first year of Academy starting, was work on the express lanes. Last year it was like more work in the express lanes, and now I don't know. It seems like there's like 5 construction projects going on simultaneously, and like trying to navigate them is just like playing a real life version of Frogger between lane closures, side streets. It's delightful.
Yeah, the commute home last night was my car heard me say lots of things as I was screaming at all the highway exit ramps and on ramps being shut off. But hey, the West Seattle Bridge is open. So,
progress.
Progress, not perfection.
Yeah, this is like
I don't live in West Seattle anymore. If I did, that'd be really tight that the bridge is open. But
this is so hyper specific to like South King County. You've seen the Community episode where Abed is doing stand up and he's like, and Troy is on the couch and he's like laughing about like the rooms in their apartment.
Yes,
I feel like that's what we've done to the intro.
Correct.
So anybody that's outside of the greater King County, Seattle area, I apologize. I'm sure you have some parallel to this to your own local jurisdiction. But like, anyways, we started team training. And man, it's been pretty cool to see. And just like, I've said this privately and I'll continue to say it publicly, huge props to you, to Mark, to Stratton for basically creating a much better system for us to train coaches. Like we talked about, on here, like the system, we talked about training the system, we talked about training the coaches. And then like for the last 2 weeks, we've actually got a chance to see how that's going.
And stress test it. And like, that's when right, like you can build a system and a thing that you think is like really cool and this is going to work really well.
Yeah.
And then you put it in use and like, it's like, oh, we didn't plan for this or this, and like, this is chaos. And like, sure, there's always going to be some of that stuff, especially when you use the amount of technology that we use.
Yeah.
Setting up all those accounts, getting everything like dialed that way, is always going to be like a chaotic period. But I know like, and this is something that, I talked a decent amount to former Academy coach and current Driveline employee, Alex Harder, at Middlebury College. That was one of the things like he had kind of expressed was he obviously used all the technology here on the floor as a pitching trainer and as an athlete. And like, it was pretty seamless. It was not bad. And then you get out of these walls and you have to like put it to use in like a college team setting. And like, everything just like changes. Everything goes a little haywire. Everything's a little bit harder when you don't have like the support system that's like built in here and like all the technology that we have available to us. And it's just like when you stress test it and like really add 200 kids to the mix, you see whether or not what you've done is working. And like, I know I fully anticipated more things to break than have broken.
Yeah.
And like more problems to fix like immediately than have occurred. We really like, knock on wood, everything is going like very well so far. And haven't had many hiccups at all.
Yeah. And like, you know, I obsess about like Little League baseball because I still think that Little League has like the most potential for like net positive effect in the youth baseball ecosystem just because of the volume of athletes, right? Like, and even if that volume of athletes in Little League kind of like scrubs maybe the top 10 to 15% nowadays, because those kids are getting diverted into academies like ours, I grant, you know, we don't force our kids to not play Little League, so there is a little bit of a differentiation.
It's the other way. We force them to play Little League.
We encourage them to go play recreational baseball because there's a ton of value there. But anyways, when we talk about systems like this, I always think about like the potential benefit of applying this type of stuff in just like straight up Little League, because I think that you could take what we've done in terms of like building a system and creating training curriculum for coaches, which, because we're here, is very technical.
Mm-hmm.
There is like a what's Superman's evil doppelganger?
Bizarro Superman.
Yeah, with like the backwards S.
Yeah.
There is a Bizarro version of what we do with Academy that you literally could like apply in a Little League space if you had a board and coaches that really wanted to all be on the same page.
100%.
And the crazy thing is that like there's so much just like low hanging fruit there in the Little League space, because all you're talking about is like really like a Little League regular season. You just need to have coaches in agreement about like 90 days of training and competition and another 30 days of of practice only beforehand, right? It would be so easy. It would be so easy to just like have everybody on the same page if you simply take out the parents. If you simply could just take out the parents.
One does not simply take out the parents.
Man, it would be
insert Lord of the Rings meme.
Yeah, it would be so gas to try to execute that in a Little League space, because the value for not only like the skill development and acquisition part of things, but just like the emotional barometer of like what that output would be in a Little League space would be amazing.
Yeah, no question. And like, I'm not gonna lie and say setting up the system that we set up here was easy, or like executing the practice when we do it is easy, but it's not impossible.
Right.
And like,
these are solvable problems.
They're solvable problems, and you have to like have the willpower to solve them, and not just like throw your hands up and do it the way it's always been done, because that's just easier. And like, I get it that it's easier. Like, it's not easy to create a coach's curriculum from scratch, and like, how do we want our coaches to not just like coach our kids and understand the philosophy behind it, but like how do we want them to treat our kids? And like,
I'm so glad you said that, because that's literally the first thing that I was just gonna jump into, which is like, I think a lot of times like the lowest hanging fruit for just recreational coaches or just parent coaches is to relax. It's just to relax, and it's like, understand, man, that like if you execute this like at a 10 out of 10 level, your kid's enjoyment is going to go up maybe 5%.
Yeah.
Because they're just happy to be playing if you do it right. And if you execute it like at a 0 out of 10, but you keep it positive, it's maybe like it's like a 10% swing probably either way. Maybe 20 if you have a kid that's like dyed in the wool, lives and breathes to win, and they don't understand any of that type of context. But like, it goes really off the rails. We're just like, adults are jerks. Like it's so simple.
Yeah.
You know, like that's where it goes wrong.
And that was why our first rule in hiring was to just don't be an asshole.
Yep.
And we nailed it.
Yep.
We nailed it. We have zero of those guys this year, which is a slight change from last year. We didn't have a ton last year, but we had some coaches last year who just like weren't it. And like, the change is like evident, right? Like, I was watching practice the other night, and it just like, it's always going to, and I'm there, like, none of us are ever going to disagree with that. It's always gonna be more fun to play a game of baseball than it is to like hit in the cage or like throw plyo balls into a wall or things like that. And like, you have to keep the training environment fun and engaging so that they don't realize that this is kind of boring, as opposed to like playing a game. And like, it's training is always going to be more boring. Like, you have to fall in love with that aspect of it. And I'm like, watching the difference the other night between like this year and last year, of like, we had coaches last year who were bored by the training, and like, it was obvious, like, they just wanted to get out in the field. And like, I get it. I am a coach. I would always prefer to like be on the field in the middle of a game in competition than like be in here doing like a recovery day. Like, it's just always going to be more fun. No one's ever going to argue with that. But like, last year we had coaches who had that attitude of like, we just got to do this. We gotta do it. And this year I'm like literally watching our coaches play the LTAD games with the kids.
Yeah.
And like run back and forth and do the obstacle courses and like laugh and enjoy themselves. And it's such a different change from like what a few of our coaches were last year and like really what you see all across youth baseball. Where like instead of the coach like feeling like he is obligated to be there in a way in a lot of situations, or like just like the reluctance and like the I'm annoyed to be out here with a bunch of 11-year-olds, which I get. Like some like there are days if you have most people don't do this for a living, so it's your second job. You have a long day at work, then you come and have to deal with a bunch of 11-year-olds that like
and Timmy or Tammy, they're bringing their own 11-year-old energy to the
to the
field.
And some of these times you're just like, okay, shh, I have a headache, like right, like and I get that, but like the first 3 weeks have just been. To use that drive on target, just absolute gas. And like these coaches are like out there on the floor having fun with these kids. And like, it just makes the whole environment better. And it is so clear that like we could have changed very little else about what we did last year and literally just had that.
Yeah.
And we'd be in nearly the place that we're in now.
Yeah.
Like, and that part of that is like, we haven't really gotten into like the deep training part. We're still like on ramping in a lot of ways, but it was just like so refreshing to see that like you don't see that at a lot of places where like the kids are laughing and having fun and enjoying and the coach is like laying on their ground gassed, and that is the non-driveline version of it that is like out of energy because he just like ran the obstacle course and tried to beat the kids. And like it warms my heart to like see that and like have kids who were here last year who maybe didn't have as fun of an experience, like just watch the change and like watch the difference. And like every time I hear that, like I get a message that like they can't wait to come to practice. Or I was talking to a mom last night who said like, I know this is probably not good parenting, but I let my kids choose. They have the choice. Like if they decide they don't want to go to practice on a certain day, like I'm not going to force them to go because like that just turns into me forcing them to do it. And the second I stop forcing them, they're just going to quit. They have to like want to do it on their own, and they've never had problems with that. And like they want to come to practice. And like that's so cool.
And like, and I see so much of that actual, like that effect is like this cascading long tail result of the fact that we had a better system to communicate what we're doing with our coaches and why. And then they had the ability to better communicate that to the athletes, what we're doing and why. And you bundle that with getting better about the packaging, which is simply just like not being so binary about the difference between training and games, and just like training is games. Like doing a better job of that stuff, I think it just all of that accelerates us to the point that we're at right now. And conveniently brings us to today's topic, because
I was gonna say before we get there.
Yes.
So the tweet you posted the other day, which we might end up talking about for a few minutes here before we get to the main topic, with the LTAD.
Oh yeah,
with the kid jumping off the trampoline.
Yep.
I can't remember which kid it was that you posted because we took several videos. And they were all just awesome.
Yeah.
And the kids had so much fun doing that. But the tweet, which I haven't even told you this, but I'm gonna take exception to it because it was we interrupt your like regularly
scheduled boring baseball drills.
Right. That's a baseball drill. Like maybe it's not boring, so maybe that's the difference. But like that is a baseball drill. Like they're getting better at movements that will help them in baseball. It doesn't look like a baseball drill. But like that's a baseball drill.
Yeah, and the differentiator for me is the not boring part.
The not boring.
And it's funny because like so I think it's on my social, but if you just go to Driveline Youth, either on Instagram or Twitter, you'll see it.
Like and subscribe.
Subscribe, ring that bell.
Yeah, follow. That's the word, not subscribe. Follow.
Sure, like do all the things.
I'm good at social media.
Do all the things. The kid is jumping off of a box onto a wall into the air and coordinating the next phase of things that happens, which is the landing with catching like a ball. We are going to have this podcast on audio only, I think, in the next week or so. I'm going to get that taken care of. So I'm trying to be descriptive for those of us that aren't like watching.
Oh, they can't see my face right now?
They can, but...
Oh, okay. I was about to be like, all right. Well, let's really lean back here.
one of the comments that I got, amusingly enough, was someone who's, the first thing is I think a lot of people associate athleticism with risk, which is weird
I did see that comment.
because we're trying to build athletes and like, sure, to eliminate all risk, stay in the house,
Right.
become the bubble boy. Like that's a way to eliminate all risk. Anyways, but one of the guys who had a question about it initially was like, well, it looks like it's a really hard surface. Okay, well, we're landing on a gymnastics mat, multiple gymnastics mats, which are really flippin' expensive. Side note, on top of padded turf.
Yeah.
So like, and this isn't like this is the finisher basically, right? Like we've been prepping for this type of movements for weeks, and this is literally like one of the last stations we're running in the practice.
And I was gonna say that's like a very important thing because that context isn't in the video, right? Like
Sure.
we didn't just like set this up and tell the kids like go figure it out. We started with box jumps,
Yes.
and like we progressed to the point where these are like movements that like we're not just like, hey, do this. It's like we start months ago.
Yeah.
With one movement pattern.
Yeah.
We slowly add to it to the point where they're now at. And
Yeah.
like people lose that context in that.
Yeah. And in part because I'm trying to be a little intentionally bombastic about like just like the broader message, which is what you hit on. That is a baseball drill.
Yeah.
Like force production and force acceptance. These are things that just like athletes need to do. So certainly, if I was
And finding the ball and catching the ball.
right,
Turning around off the wall, find where the ball is and catch it.
right. And like if I was presenting at ABCA to a bunch of coaches, I would like clearly identify the sum total of how we ended up here.
Yeah.
Because here is a very specific destination that requires a lot of consideration to get there. But the point is that it's like we're framing drills designed to improve and increase athletic capacity in and around our sport in a way that is engaging. And the topic that I kind of wanted to talk about today was the difference between that and I think what I went through when I was a kid, I think most people went through, which is lessons. Because lessons, first of all, is like the thing that I think a lot of parents are just like, it's like catnip. Like, we love this idea of lessons and one-on-one attention and all this other stuff. But then because it's bundled that way, you end up with a product that is inherently, it's like failure identification class. Because that's how that loop continues to run, which is diametrically opposed to either what we offer kind of in our camps, but even more specifically what we do over the course of like 10 months of team stuff.
Right.
And to get into the weeds a little bit, the reason that we say that it's the opposite is basically, again, it all comes down to value proposition and communication. I've done that thing. I have taken my kids to lessons, and the instructor is all too happy at the end of the session to tell me all the things that's wrong with my kid. So, well-intentioned, ignorant parent, I intake that information, and it's like, okay, well, if all that stuff is wrong with my son or daughter, then I need to come back to you to solve
I need to pay you more
problems.
to solve. Exactly.
Which then dovetails into one of the other things that is like related to this. Thank you, the internet commenter, Spanky. Your feedback has provided us with some glorious content. So thank you. We did a video.
I knew Spanky would come through.
Yeah, I knew. I knew I could count on him. In promoting kind of our camp product, which is either like a 1 day or a 2 week. 1 day is just like it's a single day duration, and we don't lean into everything that's wrong. We lean into context. This is how you're performing now relative to your peers. The 2 week camps, we just have a little bit more time to get a better data set about how you perform and introduce some of the stuff that if you were going to continue doing this type of training, you get a little bit more like experience to execute that stuff with like online training or coming back for camps or whatever. So I made this video talking about the idea of a baseball report card. And it's funny because I actually found my baseball report card from like 1980. It was either 89. I think it was 89.
What were the grades? What have we got here?
it's so funny because it wasn't graded. So back in the day, I used to go to Mel Stottlemyre's summer camp.
Okay.
Um, I had family in the Yakima area in Washington where they would run them, and they ran them at the Yakima Bears. It was where they played. Um, so I'd go down in the summer. Yakima, kind of eastern Washington, is incredibly hot in the summertime. So it would routinely be like 100, 110 on the field. And so I would come back very brown. Uh, and it was like 2 weeks. We'd be in these dorms. They used to project like World Series games on the side of the building on a film projector. I'm so close to death. I'm so old. I'm so old.
I'm glad I saved my "was the report card on papyrus" comment.
It wasn't chiseled on a stone tablet next to Moses and the rest of the commandments. So it was like hitting skills, defensive skills, throwing skills, and it's just a bunch of words. And this is something that like I was all too proud to receive and show to my parents, even at the outcome of like this summer camp thing, right? But buried in there was like throwing velocity. And it was the single metric that they reported. And I threw like 62 miles an hour when I was like 12 or 13, which is a not great spot to be in.
Not great.
My son probably is going to throw like 15 miles an hour harder than me this year. Like, probably. But anyways, it was just funny to like, man, that loop has been going on for a very, very long time. And the way that it gets kind of weaponized in the lesson environment is just like direct link between like flaw, because you have to come back to that. And then the other thing related to the metrics is I did this video about the baseball report card. And typically what's on there is one of two things: whole bunch of words, fast hands, quick feet, athletic stance, balanced. And the problem is when you are just using that type of language to describe someone, it's hard to understand how to actually like improve those things. Like, how do I improve my balance? How is that balance measured? How do I make my stance more athletic? How athletic is my stance right now? Is it a 9 on a scale of what to what, right? Or you get like the some of the other people in the showcase environment, you're ranked a 10. And we've talked about this topic before. Spanky replies. So exit velo is what's going to keep him competitive, him
Yes.
or her, Spanky.
Yes, it is.
Let's be a little bit non-exclusionary in terms of our gender.
But to be clear,
stratification.
yes, that is.
Because I'm pretty sure.
You're so close, dude. You're so close to the point.
Because I'm pretty sure he knows his batting average last season, how many bombs and RBIs he had, where he hit in the lineup, and what he brings to the table. I get the message, but you're presenting a very limited scope in order to sell your product. How dare you? And like Paige Schill, I'll cop to that. That's fine. There's still a lot of scouts and coaches that don't care about exit velo. Production against top competition while contributing to the team dynamic will take a player a long way too.
How dare you have a limited scope when it's not my limited scope?
Right. So like,
let me tell you what my limited scope is and tell you that it's just better than your limited scope.
This is like two people trying to have a conversation where one of them speaks one language and one of them speaks the other, and they're yelling at each other in their own language about like, why don't you understand me?
Yeah.
And Spanky, I get it. I understand exactly what you're saying. The thing though, and the reason that like he has to go, there are still some scouts and coaches that don't care about those things. Well, first of all, just throwing that statement out there implies that you understand at a fundamental level that there are more coaches who are making decisions based off stuff that is not quantified by my stupid old eyeballs.
Correct.
Like that, you're just implicitly acknowledging the thing that I told you was true, that you tried to tell me was wrong, but you're actually agreeing with me.
Yeah.
And like, sure, it's not that other layer of things isn't applicable. The difference, though, and tell me if I'm wrong, professional scout, if you have a bunch of kids and like you can scrub 3/4 of your list just because of the metrics that they don't achieve, and you can concentrate your time on the top quarter, is that not the best way for you to be effective at your job?
Not only is that the best way to be effective, but as most organizations, although now we're a little bit we have the dead cat bounce a little bit, where we've got like scouts being hired back by teams
Yeah.
at this point, and it's so like, but there was a point where a lot of scouts lost their jobs, and it was like moved much towards to a quantitative analysis of amateur prospects, which like that is literally what they do. They scrape the top.
Right.
Like if your exit velos or TrackMan data doesn't fit their model, like you can go to. I'm not gonna name the professional organization that doesn't care about this, but I think we all know who that is. But like you can go there. Like so, sure. And you can. There are always going to be somebody that has your opinion.
Yeah.
That like agrees with you. But why would you limit your child's scope to like only the coaches that are probably idiots if they don't believe in exit velocity? Like why? Like you're just like making a statement that like my kid is only going to be seen by idiots and coached by idiots, and it's just like a self-perpetuating thing. The vast majority of coaches now, at most levels, especially like college and higher, at least have like an understanding of exit velocity. And like
Yes.
you're going to always have the 5-10% who just like refuse to believe it for no reason, because they still will during BP when a guy hits a ball hard, they'll be like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Like, oh, you like the exit velocity on that one, or just like you liked the look of it?
No, I just like line drives, sir.
Yeah. So and the launch angle on that one was good. But you're just like removing the vast majority of the people who like actually coach and do it at like a high level and know that like this stuff is important. And you're just like robbing your kid of opportunities. If you are just like the person that's like exit velocity is not important, you go tell a kid that it doesn't matter that his friends hit the ball way harder than he does. And that every time he swings as hard as he can, it's just like a little duck fart that barely gets out of the infield. Like that kid's not, he knows that he should probably hit the ball harder. And like, I don't know where to go with these people, with like someone who like is just still, and like there are a ton of them out there.
Yeah.
And like bat speed, again, we've had these arguments with people on bat speed on Twitter. To me, that is slightly different.
Mm-hmm.
Where like I understand, I don't actually understand, but like it's not completely nonsensical to me for someone to be like, I don't think bat speed is going to contribute. I think you should like focus more on making contact. Like, okay, well, you don't have to do one or the other. You can do both. Yeah. But like, sure, I understand that like a kid just swinging the bat as hard as he possibly can on every swing might not get the results that you want. But like exit velocity, we're literally talking about a kid hitting a ball hard. You don't want a kid to hit a ball hard?
How dare you?
Like what? I don't understand. It has never made sense to me.
I don't want your communist numbers to creep in and infect my understanding of our great game.
Like that kid knows his batting average, right? Well, what do you think helps batting average? Hitting balls harder. Like it just like I don't know how you get through to some of these people, and like, you know, sorry, Spanky, but I kind of feel bad for your kid because, like, your kid definitely knows that he wants to hit the ball harder, and you're giving him the signal that, like, nope, like, you know where you hit in the lineup, you know what you bring to the table. You're the 9 hitter who bunts. Lift small, bunt the ball.
I just want to hit my head into the microphone, and I think that's probably going to make a lot of noise you guys won't appreciate, so I won't. But like, just imagine me doing it. To me, I draw like a. So you got to unpack how that parent lands at that position. Because again, the thing I will come back to is it just like, I think parents are inherently, we have the right intention. We want to see our kids succeed. We want to see them reach the ultimate opportunity that they can relative to what they've got and what they've earned. I think all of that stuff is pure and fine. I'm going to draw, though, a direct line between that perspective and the lesson thing.
Yeah, 100%.
Because when you exist in this model of like one-on-one instruction and lessons, where you come to me and I am going to like physically manipulate you from moving the wrong way to a progressively righter way, and I'm going to visually eye check your swing, you know, your batted ball outcomes, right? If I don't measure anything, whether where you started or how you got better, then the conversation that we have to have as service provider and parent, how did the game go? 3 for 3. They moved him from the 7 hole to the 5 hole. Okay, so I've given you several hundreds of thousands of dollars to see this improvement that is not based on anything that is relative anywhere outside of this specific ecosystem, right? Those numbers, your batting average, your place in the lineup is relative to your team and your competition. The reason that scouts and coaches at upper levels don't care about that stuff is there's just so much variable in that mix. The signal fidelity is very, very poor. Because if you go to a place that is like highly competitive on the youth or the high school side, then maybe that's real.
Yeah.
If you go to a place where the opposite is true, then that's very much not real. And as a scout or a coach, you have 2 options. Do I fully immerse myself in all this like regional reality of these little micro ecosystems of youth baseball to understand those things, the fidelity of the signaling competition? Or do I do the other thing? I don't have enough flipping time. Scrub, attack what you know.
Mm-hmm.
But the parent and the player who are like existing in this lesson model, you just like, well, we don't measure anything else. So you're just defined by the only thing you have opportunity to measure, which is in-game performance. And when we're talking about children and we're talking about highly variable biological development, that signal is corrupted and ill-informed, but you don't realize it until like the reality comes and then no one wants you.
Yeah. I saw a video on Twitter a few days ago, and you may have seen this video. I honestly don't remember the guy's name. But he's a baseball coach of some sort, and it was like a minute and a half, and he was comparing pitching gurus who use like tech to doctors. Basically, like a guy goes into a doctor's office with like a sinus infection, and the doctor runs him through a battery of tests and finds out, and like diagnostics, and finds out you have a sinus infection. Mm-hmm. And his point was like, why would you go and get the battery of tests when like a real good doctor can just look at you and tell you it's a sinus infection? And like that was literally his point. And I was like, you're so close.
You're right there.
You're so close
you're right at the
to
finish
like getting
line,
it.
buddy.
You're right there. And that's it's like a very similar thing. Like if you went to a private lesson, think about it like a doctor. Like you take your kid to the doctor's office and he has him for 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. And at the end of that 20 minutes, this doctor says, all right, here are all the things that are wrong with your child. Are you immediately just going to get all of them fixed and like pay this doctor more to do all these tests, surgeries, whatever he's recommending? Sure. Or are you potentially going to go get a second opinion because you're like, do you have evidence to prove that like you just like kind of ran my kid through it like a battery, like a regular checkup, and like now you're telling me that like he's got all this stuff wrong,
right?
When like he hasn't presented any of those symptoms before. Like I don't know, and like I can't stress enough, people love to sound smart. So they will say things and regurgitate things to sound smart, make you feel dumb, and get you to spend a lot of money because they want to prove that they are the experts. That is not how our camp and lesson model is set up. Right. And like, if we're being honest, it's probably a better business model to set it up that way.
Oh, 100%.
And the way we set up the camp model is like, here is where you're at compared to kids your own age. We're giving you this information. Do what you want with it. Do what you will with it. Like, we're not going to lie to you. We're not going to gas you up and tell you that you're better than kids your age, or like that if you just have this one mechanical tweak, like you're going to get better. Like, no, like it's going to take a lot of work and probably a decent amount of time in the weight room to like actually improve these issues. One mechanical tweak is not going to solve the problem, but like maybe this guy makes one mechanical tweak and then the next ball you hit is like 3 miles an hour harder, which like if you don't have a tracking technology, it just seems a little bit harder, and you're like, oh, that worked.
Yeah.
And then that's all the signal you get. That's all the evidence you get. That's all you need. And you're like, I am a great coach. God, I'm good. I just solved this kid. And maybe the next swing, he's right back to where he was at first. But like that first swing sounded a little bit better. Yeah. Looked a little bit hotter coming off the bat. So like now I'm right.
Yeah. Well, and it's like, I'm thinking about one of the lefties on your team who, because we've constructed this type of environment and we've afforded him this amount of time, has made substantial mechanical changes to his swing. Um, those mechanical changes have been oriented around output.
Mhm.
This is the opposite. This is the exact opposite of, like, I think what is commonly thrown at like data-driven training, which is just like you put a blast motion sensor on a kid's swing and you just have them just like flail, you
Mhm.
know, because again, at the end of the day, Spanky, we're talking about hitting balls hard. That's just it, and not the single shining outlier of hard hit balls, but like, how do you progressively do this with consistency and with increasing output over time?
Mhm.
And even within the camp setting, like we had a kid last weekend that came down from Canada. They drove down. It's like it's several hour drive or whatever. Kid's a good baseball player. It just good, moves well, a little small, but young, and so to be expected, right? And we got a chance, so we collect some data on the throwing side, we collect some data on the hitting side, and then it's just like, hey, look, here's our normative performance ranges, right? So R&D is constructed for us, basically this matrix of like bat speed, exit velocity, and throw ball velocity. This is how that stuff changes over time. This is kind of like the expected gain. I should have probably presented this to you guys with some visual aid. I promise we'll do that at some point, or we'll just publish a blog. Actually, a lot of this stuff is on a blog already, by the legend himself, David Beskey. And it was just like, hey, look, this is where you are, man. The kid's like 60, 65, 66 off the bump. And the goal is to they want to be to 75 by the end of this year, starting next year. It's a perfectly reasonable goal. The kid is kind of like right at, for his age, like the normative average. And and again, to roll all the way back to the question about scouting, average is a problem.
Average is a problem.
Like average is a problem, because there's just, what that means is that you don't present any differently than a lot of other kids.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're one of those kids that like presents similarly, and you can heat check me on this, right? You present similarly, but like you have a physical frame, like what you bring to the table biologically, that looks like, all right, this kid's gonna I know he's gonna put on like 30 pounds of muscle or whatever.
Yep.
Like, you can present, I think, average and have a little bit of like some biological outlier projection and probably get a better look.
Mm-hmm.
But if you present average with average biology, how's that going to work? And
It's not.
And again, the whole point of like what we're trying to do, and the reason we're trying to think about this stuff in advance, is not that I want 11-year-old kids stressed out about their college and professional opportunities. What I want to do is continue to develop their skills so that as those dreams and goals become more real, they aren't behind the curve. And that's just it. That's everything.
Yeah.
Because that reality is going to come soon.
And we're getting them, the younger we get them, the more time that we have.
Yep.
To be able to develop them and show them that, like, and this is why, like, if we're being honest, the camp model doesn't really work with what we want to do.
No, because
like,
we need more time.
We need more time. Like, everything that we do is based on like long-term development, because like you can't get gains in a day. Like, that's just like not a thing that'll, like, maybe a guy gives you a mechanical tweak and like you start hitting the ball a little bit harder. But like, that's not actually gains. Your body was already capable of doing that.
Well, and to be really specific, gains that are long lasting,
real. Yeah.
that are real, right? That stuff just takes time. And like, when we were doing bat speed testing last week,
mm-hmm.
And there was a kid who was like up 6 miles an hour from Thursday to Tuesday. We're not going to claim that.
Right.
We're just not going to claim that. That's just a result of giving a kid permission to move fast.
Yep.
Weirdly enough, that same kid was like getting PRs. He doesn't even know how good of an athlete he actually is.
Yep.
But like, we're simply conducting an environment where it is free for him to move as fast as possible around a very simple goal: hit the ball hard.
Right. And these are kids, so like you might have, and this is where like, you have like the hitting gurus or whatever, like the lesson gurus that really struggle, is like maybe a kid is just tired.
Oh,
and like fatigued, and like that's the reason he's not swinging the bat at like the speed he can swing it. And then you have him for like 2 lessons. Lesson number 2, he's swinging the bat 6 miles an hour faster. You're like, I am a genius.
I'm the man, dude.
I am so good at my job. It's like, well, or development isn't linear, and like maybe he just like was really tired the other day, or something along those lines. Like the video that we talked about at the beginning with like them jumping off the tramp is a really good example. Like that doesn't happen in a day, a week, or a month.
No.
Like that is like months of progression from like the warm-ups we do and the pogo jumps we do during warm-ups to box jumps in the weight room, and then eventually all the way up to the stuff we're doing now with some of these kids. And like that just, it can't happen in one day or in 1 week or whatever the case may be. And like it ends up becoming, as we talked about, just like a business model where like they tell you everything that's wrong with you, and like here's how I'm going to fix it.
Right.
Not here's how it can be fixed, or like here's how you can go fix it at home by like thinking about long-term athletic development, or like having the intention to just swing the bat fast.
Yeah.
It's like you need all you need is like 6 mechanical tweaks, and I'm the only guy in the tri-state area who can get you these mechanical tweaks. So like you got to come back to me, and like I have a 6 lesson package for $500 that you can buy, or whatever the case may be. And it's like you're not really going to be any better at the end of those 6 lessons because he didn't work on like making you a better athlete or a better baseball player. He just like tweaked mechanics.
And I'm really curious what the youth baseball system looks like the broad ecosystem in 20 years, because I think right now there are a lot of guys who are taking advantage of that loop. You know, they just have domain expertise because they played at a high level.
Mm-hmm.
They also are like some of the last class of players that played at that high level before we started to embrace some of this qualitative or quantitative understanding of output and performance. And like, man, the game has changed for hundreds of years, and it's going to continue to. I've watched enough of the Ken Burns, the baseball documentary to like the guys where it was like the late 1700s or early 1800s, where like the pitcher's job was literally just to try to like throw hittable pitches. Mm-hmm. It was like BP.
Yeah.
So right now we're dealing with, there's some guys out in the world giving lessons who, through no fault of their own, were not ever graded or quantified in this fashion. So they don't have the ability, largely, unless like they're committed to like a growth mindset and learning more, they don't have the ability to swim that into the pool. So then you have parents who, again, well-intentioned, desperate to do well for their kids, that have to, of course I'm going to go to someone that has domain expertise. But if I go to someone that has domain expertise that is like specifically oriented in a direction that's almost the exact opposite about everything we know about the higher level baseball. And I'll even just go higher level baseball, just to like competitive 17 and 18-year-olds and up, not just the pros.
Yep.
You have a legion of parents that are being sold a bad bill of goods.
Mm-hmm.
It kills me when I see these people, like they post on these Facebook forums and like, my son's, he's 18 and he's 12-3 on the year, and his ERA is whoop-de-woo, and he hits in the 3-hole, and I just can't imagine why none of these college coaches want to talk to him. Like, man, you were navigating blindly, and you chose that. And that is the unfortunate reality, is that nowadays a lot of this stuff, when it comes to blast motion sensors, pocket radars, the pulse sensor, if you want to try to quantify workload, it's not that expensive.
Yeah.
And
we can, there's like especially if we're talking 17, 18-year-olds, there's a pretty direct one-to-one comparison between like trying to get into a college, right? Like,
sure.
You can't be like, my kid's got like almost all A's and
he's
like
the best
1B.
studier.
Yeah, he's like just really good at studying. And like I don't understand why Harvard won't look at him. It's like, well, did you like maybe he didn't take the SAT, or if he did, like his scores are really bad. Like there's a quantifiable like threshold and benchmark that you need to have to get into most schools, right? Like, and you can't like I have not really heard of a lot of parents just totally ignoring those thresholds, like whether or not you agree with like the standardized testing. Like most kids take the standardized test, like they have to take it through school or whatever. Like they know what their scores are. It doesn't matter in your life what your score is. Like
Sure.
it doesn't matter that you got a 35 on the ACT. Like that.
Yeah.
That matters right up until you get into college, and then never again.
It only matters whether it gates you from the next opportunity or not.
Right, but you don't
That's-
hear parents complaining about that.
Right.
And like, why are they quantifying my kid's intelligence when my kid is great at studying, or like he's a sweet kid who cares a lot about? He like wakes up every day and goes to school, and like he's got friends, and like one of his teachers really likes him. That's the equivalent of like he bats like 5 in the lineup, and he's got a really good on base percentage.
Yeah.
Like great. Like how hard does he hit the ball? How hard does he throw the ball? That is like the 1-to-1 equivalent to like your SAT scores or things like that.
Yeah.
And you don't see a lot of parents, at least I don't see a lot of parents like complaining that people quantify kids' intelligence and that this is like a threshold to get into certain colleges or whatever.
Yeah, no,
and that's like, but then on the flip side of the same coin, it's like, oh well, I want my kid to play professional baseball, which is somewhat equivalent to getting into one of those like top schools.
Yeah.
But like, how dare they gate my kid because he can't throw above 88? Like, how dare they?
Yeah. But I understand it because you just exist in this ecosystem of feedback that is poor.
Mhm.
Right? It's very poor feedback. It's non-informative feedback, and you don't understand that it's bad until you understand that it's bad.
Until it's too late.
Until it's too late.
Yeah.
And like I'm hopeful for like what 20 years from now looks like, because hopefully we get to a point where when 180-pound Mookie Betts or whatever he actually weighs, right? Not necessarily the biggest like genetic outlier, but like supreme skill presentation. When that guy starts doing lessons, I'm curious what it could look like, Yeah. And the hope is it truly that the more this stuff gets democratized in terms of price point and in terms of acceptance and understanding, the whole point is to try to catch more fish and then develop those fish towards like, what does a big fish look like?
Yeah.
Like that's just it. And and the reality is right now is that I think baseball, we're all aware, is kind of starting to become like a country club sport because of the price of a lot of things associated with it. It's not like basketball where you can just like go down to the court and shoot.
Mm-hmm.
And I say this and understanding that I am also complicit in this ecosystem because we have teams and we charge money for it. I get all that. But like the whole, and again, to bring it all the way back to the whole Little League thing, right? Is it like if some of those organizations that have large bodies of players can rally parents and coaches around very simple ideas of just like, let's understand what is good and let's actually train that, as opposed to the small pond. I just want my kid to go 3 for 3, and I get it, and I've talked on here ad nauseum about techniques and tools for like trying to present context for parents and kids about performance. Cletus Coffey, who ran our PCA stuff, our Positive Coaching Alliance, we talked about that last time, was just phenomenal. He was just made that point so directly. Like when your kid comes home from the baseball game, what do you ask them? Right. How to go? We're just
Did you win?
Yeah. Like we're so defined by like this outcome approach, and and I guess I'm just stupid enough to think that we could get enough people together to understand that like the outputs mean more than the outcomes. And man, I want our sport at the youth level to look more like track and field. I just that's it. Just measure some very, very basic impactful stuff, because once you do that, you start holding that lesson guy or girl, you start holding their feet to the fire.
Yeah.
Which, as a parent, should get you the opportunity to get more value for the money that you're investing in your child's development.
Right.
Right? Like like that's a question that because we have access to all this, we are uniquely qualified to answer. My hope is, well, I guess there's one of two ways that this thing can go. Either the rest of our marketplace becomes like even more firm in their ignorance of this stuff, in which case, great. As I've said before, you guys are right. I'm wrong. It's going to work out great for you. Please don't change. There's that possibility, or there's a possibility that, again, like more democratization of just an understanding of what is good in our game, and an evaluation against that relative to where you are to your peers, relative to where you are to their goals, and it could transform the whole thing.
Yeah, and I think one of the frustrating parts to me is a lot of this starts at the top.
Yeah,
where
100%.
You've got, and like, I'm not saying this is wrong because it's not wrong, right? Like I've read the books, like I've read Swing Kings, right? Like I've read a lot of these books about like these swing doctors that saved Justin Turner's career. Mm-hmm. What the context they leave out is Justin Turner was still a big leaguer before he went to the swing doctor.
Yeah, Craig Wallenbrock took a guy who was in the show,
right, and like
helped him get better.
Right, made some tweaks that like opened up the door for him. And by the way, most of those tweaks were just like swing the bat harder and like focus
Hit the
on
ball
like
in the air.
focus on like exit velocity and pulling the ball in the air. Just throwing that out there. But this is when we see a guy come out of nowhere. We fall in love with the story of he was down bad and he found this one guru, this one coach who got him back on the right path. It's like the Hollywood story, right? It's the Disney story. But what gets left out is like they were already good. Like your kid isn't one swing tweak away from being the best player in his little league.
I'm so glad you're going here.
He's like 1 year of lifting weights and like again like trying for bat speed away from being the best player in his little league.
Yeah.
And it's just like we just keep perpetuating this narrative at the highest level that like this is like Aaron Judge goes to a person for like swing things like your kid, why doesn't your, and like as a parent, I'm not saying I'm a parent, but like as a parent seeing that, like that's probably the signal I would get too if I didn't know any better. Of I have to like this is how Aaron Judge got good. Like not the fact that he's 6'7", 240 pounds, but like
incredibly pervasive.
Yeah,
it's pervasive and so compelling.
Yeah,
it's so compelling. And the funny thing is, not to turn this into like things that Deven and Jeremy saw on social media this week, but like there's one of those accounts that like, you know, they just do like a bunch of old baseball stuff, right? And they reposted this famous Greg Maddux clip where I can't remember what documentary this is from. Anyways, and Greg Maddux is like, well, I realized at the upper level that, you know, that velocity didn't mean as much as I was used to. And it's like, and he says in the quote, he's like, well, you know, velocity is what'll get you drafted.
He literally says it in the video. And like people were commenting on the video. So like, I told you, like velocity doesn't matter. And he literally says multiple times in the video, velocity will get you drafted. And like, I mowed down a bunch of high school hitters throwing 95. And then like, once I got to the upper levels of the minors, like I had to really learn how to pitch. Yeah, man, that's how it works. Like you have a skill that opens the door for you, and then you work hard to develop the secondary skills that like get you all the way to the finish line.
In the mental gymnastics to just acknowledge what he's saying there, which is that the inverse is not true.
Right.
The inverse is just fully not true.
Yeah.
And even in so much as there's that layer to it, then there's the other layer to it, which is your kid isn't going to be Greg Maddux just because you wish it to be true.
Wait, what?
You can't just take a kid that throws.
What if I name him Maddux?
I mean, sure, that's a good first step, I suppose. You can't just like wish a kid to have like outlier command, shape, and feel of multiple pitches.
Yeah.
You go ahead, try to develop that instead. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, there's literally guys who like their whole business model is like, I don't want to call the guy out, but let's say it is very command focused.
Okay.
if you throw slow with great command, you're giving hitters more time to make decisions about the pitches that they don't want to swing at, and then eventually you have to come over the plate. And what's going to happen?
It's the thing they're missing there is that we're not robots. Like it's not possible to be 100% and hit your spot every time. It's not even possible to be like 60% and hit your spot 60% of the time. Like, and we talked about this, I don't know how many weeks ago on the podcast. It might be the most recent one we did, but like, that's why we train bat speed and throwing velocities, because it allows you to make more mistakes and get away with it. Yeah. Like, last night, we had multiple kids who were like getting top eighth exit velocities on balls that they were catching like super deep.
Yeah.
Or way too far out in front, and like, or terrible launch angles, or whatever the case may be. And like, that's still pretty good. Like, the contact quality isn't like, the smash factor is not what we want it to be, but like, they are still able to like drive the ball at like a pretty good exit velocity while mishitting the ball. And that is why we work on bat speed.
Alternatively, you could just hit it where the fielders aren't.
Oh, explain this to me. What happens if the fielder moves though?
Well, we should just ban that. I mean, if we're going to,
we did.
Well, I guess we did. I'm sorry. You're right.
We did.
You're right. Like, I don't know. I feel weird always talking about my own kids and stuff like this, but like Danny was hitting in one of our groups last night, and he was having a really good round. He was hot for like, it was like 4 or 5 swings in a row. And one of his teammates is like, he's like, making noise and stuff, because it was so tight, man, because all of them, the environment was so positive and encouraging for each other. Mm-hmm. And one of those kids was a kid who is a pretty big kid at his age, but he's been a little bit light in terms of EV and just his hit tool. And I know that you spent a lot of time talking to that kid about just like, look, man, you just got to trust that this is going to resolve, right? It's going to resolve. And last night, man, it was so great to see him like finding those barrels and like being proud of what he's producing relative to his peers, and a lot of them are smaller than him. Yeah. Like, just to see that thing turn. And I know that like you made a point of telling him how proud you were. I think I probably told him 3 times. I think you probably told him 2 or 3 times.
I'm pretty sure he watches the podcast, so I'm proud of you, Colby.
I'm Babe Cole. Love that kid. But honestly, all those kids in that group, productive misses was like literally a thing. Yeah. And I'm just bringing up D because I remember it, but like he was like 255, 261, 248, like, was just hitting the ball hard really consistently. And then he had one swing that was like 230 right center gap on a miss.
It's a good miss.
That's a good miss when you're 13.
Yeah.
That's a really good miss. Yeah. And like, and again,
Alex Bregman threw a homer last night. Pretty good miss.
And I'm glad that we do this, and I'm glad that people listen, because we're just trying to weaponize the information that we have, being in an ecosystem in a company that works with like the highest level athletes, mm-hmm. in the company that's staffed by like high level thinkers whose jobs 7 days a week is to like understand what is good and develop and train it. Mm-hmm. And then what we try to do is, again, instead of this lesson model where it's just like, here's a bunch of stuff that's wrong, and you have to basically, I weaponize my domain experience against you so that I am the only person to solve these problems. And just, we're trying to democratize information. Mm-hmm. Like that's just it.
Yeah.
That's just it.
Yeah.
Right? Like pre-internet, you had to have encyclopedias. Encyclopedias were expensive, or you had to walk to the library. Mm-hmm. Now we have the internet, and information is everywhere. Mm-hmm. The whole point of like us raging against the lesson model, the whole point about taking an approach to long-term athletic development, the whole point about doing things like jumping off of a box and then jumping off of a wall and then catching a ball and coordinating a way to safely land all those things is develop the thing that we understand to just be holistically good at the end of the rainbow, which is a good athlete that has good baseball skills that we understand in a quantifiable fashion.
And I will tell you, there's not always kids that are going to get it.
Of course.
And there's definitely not always parents that are going to get it. And like a couple examples from just the last handful of days that we've had where it's just like, and I'm sure you feel the same way, where it's just like, man, we're doing this right. And like the kids are the ones telling us that. And like that, like if the kids aren't telling us that, then we're not doing this right. At the end of the day. And like we got a message from a parent who I think the kid in question also watches this podcast.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
And he came home and was so excited about a PR.
A deadlift
and it was
PR.
a deadlift PR.
Yeah.
And like, sure, that he also had PRs in the cage that night.
Yeah.
But he was excited because he had the deadlift PR. And like last night with my team, like I'm sure every baseball coach has to deal with the teammates arguing with each other and kind of getting on each other's nerves, especially when they spend that much time with each other. But I had like a very unique argument between teammates last night of like they're throwing a hybrid B, which for those of you who aren't familiar, hybrid B is our medium intensity day, so it should be about 70% intensity. And one kid threw a ball, and the other kid said, that's not 70% intensity. And he's like, well, of course it is. Like, I'm going at 70% intensity. He points to the radar gun and says, like, that's not 70%. You're throwing it way too hard. And they had an argument of like, no, that's 70% of what my top velocity is. And like, I'm just sitting there like, this is a driveline this is an argument that could only happen at Driveline Academy.
Yeah, it's
and like the buy-in levels where it's like, not like I throw harder than you or like I throw more strikes than you, but like literally my 70% velocity is like, is that. It's not less than that. Like I know my arm. I know I'm like pulling myself back to 70% and still throwing that. And it got like heated because they're just like arguing about 70% velocity on hybrid B days. And it's just like, I know we're doing the right thing. And like, I know these kids are like getting it and buying in. And there's also a kid last night who like, I told him for fun when he comes next Tuesday, I may just like tell him they can't throw a hybrid A just to see what this kid's reaction is going to be. Because he has a countdown going on 3 months now of when he can throw off the mound again.
Yeah.
Most kids.
At full intent. At full intent. Yeah.
Most kids at 13 would just throw off the mound and not listen to their coach.
Yeah.
And just like, yeah, sure, coach. You tell me to take months off from throwing. I like to throw, so I'm just going to do it. And this kid has, and like, not just this kid, all of them have like followed this, and the buy-in is incredible, and they are just like so excited to throw on Tuesday and like see what numbers they hit. And like, it matters to them. Like the numbers matter to them. They see it. And I'm pretty sure we talked about this on the podcast, but like kids like video games. This is the thing that they like.
Yeah.
MLB The Show. A lot of these kids like to play the show. Every swing you take on the show, or every time you hit the ball, I should say on the show, they give you a little exit velocity reading. They give you a little launch angle reading. The kids know this.
Contact depth too.
Yeah, contact depth too. I have heard your son complain about getting perfect timing and perfect. And like it's 110, and like at like a 20-degree launch angle, and something line out to the right fielder. It's like, what the hell?
Yeah.
And it's like, I did everything perfect. It's like, yeah, you did. But like sometimes it doesn't work out that way. But like they know, the point of that is like they know these numbers already. Yeah. Hiding these numbers from them or like pretending they don't matter is just not the way to connect with these kids. It's like giving them more of those numbers.
Yeah.
But giving them the right numbers and pushing them in the right direction with those numbers.
Yeah.
And like, we set goals. Like, if you ask the kids on a lot of these academy kids what their goals are, they're not going to tell you, thankfully, because we're doing our jobs right, they're not going to tell you, I want to hit 350 next year.
Yeah.
They're going to tell you, I want to hit 100 pounds or 180 pounds, depending on how old they are, like whatever age they are. And they're going to tell you they want to hit a certain exit velo, they want to hit a certain bat speed, and they want to hit a certain throwing velocity number. And that's good. They should have those numbers to strive towards, because like, how do you know if you're getting closer? Because like the training part is just, it's not always fun. And like it can be a real grind. If you have a full day of school, you played a bunch of dodgeball, so your arm's a little fatigued.
Yep.
You show up and like your throwing velocity is like not where you want it to be, and is maybe even lower than it was last practice. That's okay. But you don't get that information if you don't have the feedback.
Yeah. Yeah, and like in that whole that whole loop also allows the kids to hold us accountable, right?
That's the most important thing.
Which again is very different than the lesson thing, because
How do you hold them accountable?
how
Yeah.
how like all I've done is just I've codified my evaluation through incredibly hyper specific, my own stupid eyeballs, my perception of how you move fast, and like, man, I'm 45, like when I really like want to work with a kid and understand what's going on, I'm for sure just taking video at the very least, just so I can understand and slow things down.
Yeah.
Training this way gives us the opportunity to like have the kids hold us accountable. And like, I am fine being in that space. I love being in that space, because the alternative of that, where the athlete can go to the instructor and like, hey, like, why aren't I where I want to be? I mean, what are you going to say? Well, you didn't attend my $75 hour lessons enough. And it all starts.
Or eventually they just run out of answers.
Sure.
Like
yeah.
I've tried all your mechanical tweaks.
Yep.
And like, it's again, like I get slightly better and then I just go right back to where I was, because like I'm not training anything. Yeah. I'm just like fixing problems and creating other problems, and like not actually being better at just like moving fast and like moving the bat fast and becoming stronger. And the lesson guy's gonna eventually run out of answers.
Yeah.
Because and like run out of fake mechanical tweaks to fix you.
And most critically, the most significant issue is you're in an ecosystem that doesn't provide you feedback.
Right.
Like I've been thinking about this a lot lately. It's just like, it's just feedback, and there's a bunch of different ways you can give that feedback to kids, but like, whether it was, some of the camps stuff that we've done lately, or some of the stuff I've been on the floor for, unsurprisingly, we have a lot of kids from age like 12 to 16 that their contact depth is just far too deep.
Mm-hmm.
It's way too deep, which presents a couple issues. One is that like, if your barrel is not like perfectly on plane on time, the moment that it drops in the zone, you don't have the real estate to make that little like micro correction to get a hard hit ball. So you just get like a bunch of bad contact that is really from nothing other than the fact that like your margin of error is just so thin.
Yeah.
If you're not perfect, and so we had a kid who just like has a little bit like of hand pump at the top, right? In part because he's a kid. His ability to get consistent barrels is just defined by like where in that process,
the rhythm,
in his rhythm, because as soon as he has to go, he just goes, and his contact depth is so deep that he doesn't have the ability to like, he has no runway to make a course correction.
Yep.
And then there's the other thing, which is just like, look, if you want to accelerate an object as fast as you can, you need distance. Right? You just need distance. So like one of the kids in the cohort, and also one of these kids in these camps, it's like it's an easy thing that I suppose if I didn't exist in a realm that had technology that I could coach a kid out of, right? Hey, like we can do like the baseball in the plate, the baseball on the front lip of the plate, and then the baseball like 6 to 12 inches in front of the plate, right? And we can just talk about, hey, I want you to understand where you're making contact depth. But like, the reason that stuff is so impactful is because we can kind of understand the problem, and you can, again, I could do this on a dirt field, right? And I could just kind of observe a kid with my eyes. Maybe I take a little bit of video and I see that he's making contact just like here, like at the belly button or before, and I can understand that. But the biggest lever to turn is just like being in a feedback environment where you can go like, look, see on that screen where you're making contact. You see how it's right at or in front of the plate? Get it out here. And then they take a swing and they make like small iterative progress. And then I'm like, hey, okay, more. And they take a swing and they make small iterative process. And like, that's the reason why this type of coaching, I think, just like it sinks deeper, is because it's not just like the one mechanical correction that I like that has untold outcome, untold effect, and then I lose the map to it. It's like we're doing the other thing. I'm drawing a direct line between what are we achieving right now? What is our outcomes? What is the change that we're trying to implement going to look like? And then what is the effect of that change? and it's like, man, I've done this for years. Just like
Yeah.
lock it, throw the key away. Once you find that feel, there's a whole bunch of research about that stuff too, about just like informing athletes when that's the way that you make this stuff sink deeper.
Yeah.
And I get that there are guys that do lessons that they are doing their absolute damnedest to provide value. You know, like it's really easy, I think, to cast that whole industry as just like bad actors, and certainly there are some of those. I also understand that there are guys who are just like, man, they're doing what they've done. You know, they did what they experienced, and they're doing their best. And if you're one of those men or women that's in that space, just get a bat sensor. You know, like get a radar gun.
Spend the money you would spend on lessons and just get a bat sensor.
Because
and you can be your kid's best private lesson coach by just like understanding what data you collect from the bat sensor makes sense. And I had this conversation with a parent this week who had previously purchased a bat sensor, a Blast, and like had no idea what was important.
right, what's good?
What's good. And like not just what's good in terms of like my kid had like a 58 bat speed. Is that good? What's the context is like Pierce's age, but like they have plane score, they have like efficiency. There's a lot on there that like doesn't necessarily matter, right? Like that, like there's things to focus on from that data.
You can
like,
scrub for youth kids. You can scrub a lot of that,
all of it,
which gives you the
except
opportunity to focus.
Two things,
yeah.
right? Like bat speed, attack angle. That's like that's what matters, especially at the youth level. And like you can give your kid private lessons with a blast sensor because you get the immediate feedback, and like it's very easy to just be able to tell your kid, okay, like this isn't what we wanted, like keep trying. And then once they get it, okay, now you've got that.
Yes.
You feel that?
Yep.
Okay.
Stay in that feel.
Repeat it. And you repeat it, and now you repeat it 10 times, 15 times, and now it's muscle memory, and now you've got it, now you're fine.
Yeah.
And, you know, do you think Hunter Pence ever went to a private lesson coach? Like for a guy that age, I don't know where. I think he grew up in
He's a Cali guy.
Is California, Texas, one of them. I don't think he was like a non-baseball hotbed guy. So like, there's a good chance he went to private lessons. I would love to have been a fly on the wall in those private lessons where they're telling Hunter Pence probably, hey, stop stepping in the bucket.
Yeah, don't do that.
Whatever your swing is, don't do that.
Chris Davis,
and
big
he rode
step
that.
in the bucket guy.
He rode that all the way to a Hall of Very Good career.
Yep.
And like somebody along the way, like several people, probably told him not to do what he's doing.
Yeah.
And they allowed it because the results were there, because he just kept raking all the way through.
Yeah.
And like they kids who swing like that, which I've seen plenty of, it's not necessarily a bad thing if their intention is correct. And if they're like swinging the bat really fast, don't try to change their movements to try to get them to make more contact quality.
Yeah.
Maximize what their bat speed is for contact quality.
Yeah, yeah. Which again means you have to have an understanding of like what are the outputs and the outcomes. Right. Like and which it's just inherently very difficult to have a honest assessment of that stuff if you're just using your eyeballs.
Yeah.
So like, and that's the thing. If you're a lesson person right now who's listened to this thing for almost an hour and it's just like raging in your apartment or waterbed or whatever. I was thinking about the Letterman football coach guy on Twitter. Waterbed. Just go out and get a bat sensor yourself.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, honestly, I would challenge you to get a bat sensor, get a pocket radar. It's going to be a low-level technology investment that's going to allow you to answer some very simple questions, which are, is my stuff actually helping? Like, and maybe it is. And in which case, now you have the ability to say to that next client, hey, look at what I've done.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's the thing. You know, we've been doing this for 2 years with teams. I've been doing this at Driveline since 2018. I can tell you what our typical improvements are. I can also show the difference between that and the expected biological gain. And so long as we continue to beat that, we are on the right course. So like if you're one of those lesson, people that is just like, man, just try it. Like literally, because it's going to help you be a better instructor. because you're going to have some proof that your stuff is actually helping, and proof that isn't defined by an ecosystem of competition that is just like very, very weird and messy, and the signal is not good.
Yeah, and we we talked about this on a pod a while back when we were talking about selecting the correct travel ball program for you. Program for you. You got to ask follow-up questions.
Yeah.
And like, it's as simple as what is your system? Like, what's your system for player development? How are you going to develop my kid? What's your system for coaching? Like, how do you develop your coaches? You go to a private lesson guy and they give you all these mechanical flaws. Okay, what are you going to do to fix it?
Right.
And if they're not willing to tell you, they probably don't know, and they're just trying to take your money. Or if they're not willing to like provide evidence of like, I've seen it on this kid, like not your kid, but I've seen it on this other kid, and here's what I did to fix it, and like here's some video or whatever. Like, just ask follow-up questions. Don't take it for what it's worth. Like, it's and I'll use an analogy here. Like, not a dentist fan. Throwing that out there. I don't like them. I went a couple years ago because I had like sensitivity in one of my teeth. They did, the whole stick the fingers in my mouth and poke around thing, and told me that I grind my teeth while I sleep, and that I have like an exposed nerve because I grinded my teeth while I sleep.
Okay.
And like, I'm just gonna say, sitting there in that chair, they made me feel like I was about to die. Like, this was like, how dare you grind? I know in my head that a lot of people do this, whatever. And they were like, I was like, okay, so like, how do I solve this? And I wish I had like really thought more about it, but their immediate answer was like, okay, we'll take a mold of your teeth and we will get you like a mouth guard, and like that is like specifically molded to your teeth or whatever. And you can have that. You can go on your way. Just wear it at night when you sleep. Okay. $700 later, they have the mold of my teeth. They made the mouth guard. I get it, and I'm like, I could have solved this problem with a $10 mouth guard from Walmart that they sell for like football, boxing, any of this stuff. So like, I spent $700 on a problem that was like a $10 solve.
Yeah,
and like, it's not dissimilar to spending all that money on like a swing coach or lessons when like the solve is right there for a lot cheaper, and you can do it on your own. You don't have to feel like you can't, and like you just have to take these people for what they're saying, because like they have a business, they want to make money too, and like you have to ask these questions, and like don't just blindly follow this person when he's saying make these mechanical tweaks to your child.
Yeah, I mean, there was one of the trolls du jour on one of the social media networks is like, oh, what do you ask an instructor to figure out if they're one of those guys? And it's like, it's kind of crowdsourcing answers, and so many of the answers are like, who'd you play for? Like, sure, you like 100%. I get that, but like when it comes to the absolute just like sheer truth about going to the show, it's incredibly random. You have to be incredibly lucky. And if you are not a biological outlier, as far as I can tell, you can ratchet up the effect of randomness and luck, because it's just going to be really hard. Like it's really, really, really hard. And specifically, even more so when you hitch your train to an instructor who's just going to go like, they're going to orient away from just like the fundamental truth, right? Like, where you played is great. That's great information to have. Sure. Fine. What are you going to do for my kid? What's the system? What's the expected improvement? Because these are things that, again, technology has democratized our access to this type of stuff. And like it's just the bar is really low to start to understand this stuff. So, I get that like a lot of parents are generally uncomfortable with like their amount of baseball knowledge. I work here, and I'm still, I still feel like I should know more.
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel terrified that I don't know enough to help my children get to where they want to go. But at the end of the day, the reason that my kids are here is because of a system, and because of a system that's going to tell you the truth about where things are. and their ability to weaponize that information to understand where they're going, right? Like that's just it. I just think that so much of just like the secret sauce here is it's just this feedback loop.
Mm-hmm.
It's a feedback loop, and it's a system. There are ways you can deploy these tools without having a 6-digit or even a 6 or a 4-figure sum of money. Like you can deploy this stuff and start to achieve clarity about like where am I going, what have I gotten, right? Like
100%.
And you don't have to be like backed into that corner and go like, well, I just have to keep giving the guy that lives in my town that played some Pecos League ball $75 an hour.
Yep.
To get nothing. Like it doesn't have to be that way.
Correct.
So I think that's all we got.
Yeah.
I think that's all we got. We will have a very special guest coming onto the show very soon that I'm very excited about, and I will tell the tale of like how Deven ended up working at Driveline in
I thought you were going to spoil who it is.
No, it's a secret. It's a secret. No, we'll get into that stuff. I'm really excited. I think that the next couple times we'll be able to talk a little bit more about like the deeper water of training that we're getting into once we finish onboarding. We're going to bring Connor Stratton on here to talk about this idea of overtraining, which I think is just like is so unfortunately prevalent in the youth space. And again, it's from well-intentioned baseball parents who see that Aaron Judge played football and basketball and baseball in high school. And I go, well, obviously that's the thing that my kid needs to do.
Right.
But like your kid isn't 6'7".
Right.
Like Aaron Judge is not good at those things because he plays all those sports. He's just like, he's an athlete. So he's probably good at everything he does.
Also, not for nothing, but Aaron Judge probably got a lot better at baseball once he focused specifically on baseball.
Weird.
Like those movement patterns for all the sports, like definitely helped.
Yeah.
And like, we're not ever going to say don't play multi-sports, but like, that's not why he's really good at baseball.
Yeah.
That's just not a thing.
Yeah. Weirdly, you have to like train the thing to get better at the thing to get the most maximal benefit. Like that's just.
It is weird, but that does sound accurate.
Checks out. Yeah. Checks out. So thank you guys for being here as per usual. We'll catch you next time. Special guest maybe, or maybe the one after that, depending on how soon we do the next one. But Jason Ochart's going to be on the podcast. I'll see you guys soon. Bye.